right, let's get started today. My name is Scott Gannett. I'm the Director of Marketing for Hirose Electric Americas. And today we're welcoming everyone to our May product focus meeting. Just a quick reminder to everyone to please mute your phone.
Thank you.
So please mute your phone as we're going along here. We want to make sure we can all hear the presenter. So we're trying something new this time. So a little special little thing that you're going to see during this session is we're going to have 5 questions. So you're going to have 5 questions as we're going through. They're multiple choice questions. And anyone that gets all 5 questions correct will receive a $10 Starbucks gift card. Just for joining us and participating and listening in, you get your little trivia in there on the products. You get those 5 right, and then we'll send out any Starbucks gift card to everyone that gets all 5 questions correctly. So there's the challenge for you today. Make sure you're paying close attention and get a chance to read those questions. As normally we do with polls, the questions will pop up, so you'll have a multiple choice answer. Just go ahead and answer them. So very exciting on that today, the new little trivia participation with a chance to win the Starbucks gift card. Today, I am excited to welcome both Dave Gallagher and Naral Rathod. So Dave's going to go through a new NPI release, so a brand new product that we're about to release to the channel, the TM61P. So that's the first product we're going to talk about. And then Naral's going to follow up and talk to us about a product refresh on the DF51, DF51K. So exciting on that. So look for those questions during the session. The presenter will cue you when those questions come up. Go ahead and answer those. And then, as always, we will do a quick question and session answer afterwards. If you have if you do have questions during the session, I encourage everyone to go ahead and put them in the chat as well. I do monitor the chat, and I'll keep an eye out for those and try to find ways to sneak those questions in the presenter in flight, as it were, to make them flow along. But remember, that option is always there to throw the questions into the chat, and I'll make sure I get them in front of the presenters. So, without any further delay, I am very excited to pass the baton over to Mr. Dave Gallagher. Dave, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. We missed your energy in our last little short session yesterday, so appreciate that intro today on covering the changes we're doing today. So obviously, as Scott mentioned, be sure to pay attention for those little details. You never know what we're going to ask those questions on. But let me start off with the TM61P series. This is a new RJ8PAC style connector. And this one hasn't shown up in your distribution notification packages yet. It will be rolling out at the end of this month, but we wanted to give you a little preview heads up that you'll be seeing this coming really soon. So it's definitely a new product that we want to tell you about. I know all of you have heard us talk about the iX series as one of our primary Ethernet solutions. However, you may not have known that Hirose carries RJ-style connectors, and just a little menu popped up on my screen here. Let me close that out. Awesome. So you may not know that we carry RJ-style connectors. You may not have really seen that too much. We don't tend to always talk about it all that much. But here in North America, that product line isn't as popular, say, in our EU location, where we have significant popularity. And just from a reference standpoint, just in the basic RJ style what we call our TM series products, we've shipped over 13 million parts in the past 12 months. So that is a nice little line of just in a very small few part numbers. And this TM61 is a new addition to that line. So certainly want to keep that in mind if you're talking about the iX and your customer hints at RJ style connections. Certainly something we can help them out with on the other side of it. So let's talk a little bit about the terminology here. We've all heard of the term RJ45, but you may not know that the RJ stands for Registered Jack. This is a system of identification first developed more than 50 years ago, jointly between the FCC and a company called the Bell Telephone Company. And each design and wiring method has a specific designation and it's actually within the Universal Service Ordering Code System, USOC. And the RJ45 was just one of many variations of that connector physical design. So the physical connector actually had many different RJ designations in that code. If you want to be technical here, then the specific connector is actually an 8P8C plug and not an RJ45. The RJ45, remember, registered jack actually refers to the female side of the connector. So you're going to see these terms used interchangeably. So if you see 8P8C, typically people are referring to an RJ style connector that we commonly call an RJ45. But if you were to go to Bixby, which is a big international standards organization, and take their RCDD testing, and if you said RJ45, you'd get marked wrong on that in your answers, and they would give you a fail on that line. So make sure that you're aware of the AP8C. When you see that on a customer document, it's not some special connector. It is referring to what we commonly call an RJ45. The connector today is defined in both TIA standards under the 968 and also under IEC. The IEC standard is a lot more popular these days globally. And as with any of these connectors, we're seeing that is typically where we target the design of the connector under the IEC. So let's go back to this new product that we're releasing, and that's the TM61P. And as I mentioned, this is an IEC AP8C Category 6A shielded connector, and it supports high-speed Ethernet communication. If you're already familiar with Hirose's TM31P, this product is very similar to it. In a few moments, I'm going to show you some comparison data between those two products. Category 6A these days is considered the de facto standard when we're talking about corporate Ethernet networks when you go into an office or there's a new installation. And yes, there is a newer version of the category system, but the reality is most people are using category 6A today. The connector supports 10 gigabit network speeds, which is honestly more than enough for most desktop systems. Typically, when we see data speed this high on Ethernet, the network designers often choose a shielded style cabling, and shielded components. The Hirose TM61P is designed to securely attach to a shielded Ethernet cable and does have a 360-degree crimp on the back side of the connector to grab onto that shield. So you get that 360-degree shielding design on that crimp. You can see in the picture here that we have, you can see there's both a plug and a boot on the connector. There are 2 part numbers needed when purchasing this product. The plug part number is TM61P-88P, and the boot is TM61P-BT. So those are the 2 part numbers that you would use. I'll go ahead to the next slide here. Terminating Ethernet connectors can be challenging. However, there are some things that we do when designing these connectors to make it a little bit easier to work with. First, the connector body is called a short body design on this TM61P, which means the installer or the person doing the assembly will need to insert the wire a little less into the plug body because it's a little bit smaller. This makes it a little easier since full body plugs require the strip length to be a little bit longer and the operator must push more of the cable jacket inside the plug body. Short body connectors, this process is just plain easier. Second, we include a wire management bar on the inside that helps hold the wires in the proper order when assembling the connector. You may hear folks call this a wire guide or a guide plate, but don't get confused with that, and don't worry if you hear different terminology. The guide bars, they're very common on these type of connectors, especially the higher speed ones. And the guide bar is the same regardless of whether they're doing EIA 568A or 568B wiring. It's the same plug. You don't have to change it or anything. On our website, we do have full assembly instructions posted there. So I do want to mention that the instructions that being there, I know that a lot of folks have had experience terminating RJ connectors that you might be talking to, and they're not going to go, oh, I should download those instructions. Let's make sure that we're mentioning that to folks that they should download the instructions. There's going to be some helpful tips inside those instructions to make the job easier and produce more reliable connections on their cable assemblies. I also want to mention here, and this is that a little bit about the hand tool here, and this is something that is the reason why we're going to wait till the end of the month to release the product out to the field. Is the hand tool? We're waiting on the final hand tool to be available and listed. I suspect that all of you will be looking to get that into inventory as soon as it's available. So we'll be releasing that hand tool at the end of the month along with the plug. When that becomes, soon as that becomes available, you'll see the memo come out about the launch and release of this product once that's loaded into the system. So let's talk a little bit more about the differences between the TM31P. And actually, Scott, if you want to throw up the question right now, and also somebody's mic is wide open there. So if we can hit mute, why don't you throw up that first question? Hopefully everybody can answer that one. The moment of silence. Awesome. Thanks, Scott. That should be enough time for him if you want to close that one out. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the differences of the TM61P series and the TM31P series. Both are Category 6A performance connectors, and both feature a boot and management bar on the inside. The first noticeable difference is the connector size. And I mentioned the short body and long body connectors earlier, and there's some differences there. The 31P is your full body traditional connector design. This short body is more compact and, as I mentioned before, a little easier to assemble. This is also a benefit for those customers that have tight space constraints, because the shorter design of the connector means it just sticks off the front of the panel a little bit less, which means they can enter into a cable bend if they need to sooner coming off of that panel design. Looking at the table here, you'll also notice that the cable entrance is a bit larger on the TM61P design. This will accommodate both FTP and SFTP style cables that are often found with this Category 6A cable type. The boot, however, on the TM61P is only available in a black color, whereas the 31P, we do have multiple colors available on our site. So be sure to take a look at that. And if your customer does need multiple colors on that boot for identification purposes, it's certainly something you want to point them to the TM31P instead of the 61P. Now, somebody asked yesterday, and I haven't been checking the chat box yet today, but somebody asked yesterday whether or not you can mold a connector like this. And the short answer is Hirose puts a boot on it so that you can seal up the back of it. There are folks out there that do mold RJ45 connectors. It is an experience thing. Can they do it? If they know what they're doing, they could. It's just not something that everybody has the experience of doing it. So if you've got a customer ask that question and they're a cable assembly house, if they're asking, they probably don't have the experience. But there are plenty of cable houses out there that do have that kind of experience. So if that is a question that comes up, certainly do mention that. But we provide through that other part number, we do provide a boot for them to use. All right, let me go over to our next slide here. And this is one of the other things we like to talk a little bit about is applications and where you're going to see this. Typically, we're seeing Category 6A cabling on commercial networks where we see this used in like network switches and desktop computers and things like that. But industrial networks are using more and more of this high-speed cabling. And this really has a lot to do with machine vision and robotic equipment. These vision applications often have demanding requirements for data performance, and as a result, they are looking to that higher speed. The other thing is you see that shielding within the design of the Category 6A cable is very common, and shielding can be a big factor when you're working with customers in an industrial environment. Now, earlier I mentioned that if you're talking about the IX series as an Ethernet solution, especially in a robotics world, you may get some pushback from some customers. You may already have about, hey, well, I'm using RJ style connectors today, and I really don't want to have. I can't design out that first piece of equipment. Maybe it's a switch, maybe it's a router, or some kind of other control device that your customer doesn't have design control of. Well, that's okay. In the picture here, you'll see we've taken an IX Industrial on one side, and we put a TM61P on the other side of it. This is honestly going to be a style that you're going to see very common if folks are looking at the IX connector, where they would need to have an RJ style on the other end. And that's what the TM61P is a great solution for. It's still fairly small in comparison to some of the full body style RJs, but at the same time, it does give you that ability to connect up to the same type of cabling to make the connection between, say, an IX on the back of a machine vision camera, or vice versa. If the camera is an off-the-shelf camera, maybe that has the RJ connector and they want to use the IX elsewhere on the device, the robotic piece of equipment. When you were working with customers, you want to understand both ends of the cable assembly, so be sure to ask about that. If you're looking at one side, ask them what's going on the other side, get an understanding where it's plugging in, and maybe you can help them out by picking out the other connector here. So let's see. Let me get down to my second question here. Scott, why don't you go ahead and post that second question?
Send me an email 4 o'clock. Hey, guys, give me your time, please. Then 9 in the morning. Hey, Paul.
All right, that should be enough time for everybody to select an answer on that one. We can go ahead and close that one out, Scott. Great. So the TM61P, in quick summary, Category 6A performance at 10 gigabit, shielded design, and we certainly do see usage in the industrial robotics. And I also should mention medical customers, any kind of factory automation. Those are great places to see a shielded RJ style connector, and certainly do want to see folks pitching this product. As I mentioned, it'll be released at the end of the month. And we'll get that package out to all our distribution partners so you can get the material on order. And I look forward to seeing lots of new projects and design regs rolling in for this MPI product. And thank you very much. And Naral, you can go ahead and take over from here.
Thank you, Dave.
I should have asked, is there any questions? And I didn't ask that, but I didn't see anything in the chat box. We can always cover more at the end with our final question. So go ahead, Naral.
This is loading up the file.
Yeah, Teams was a little slow when I loaded mine first thing.
Right, I think it's working. Can you
There it
guys see
goes.
this?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, perfect. All right, hello everyone. My name is Naral Rapid. I'm a field application engineer in Region 20. And today I'll be giving you guys a refresher on the DF51, DF51B, and the DF51K. So the DF51 connector. The DF51 is a 2 millimeter pitch wire to board connector, and this connector features side latches, and it's available in straight, right angle, inline type, and a branch adapter as well. And this connector's got options for tin or gold plating. The tin plating has a mating cycle of 30, and the gold plating has a mating cycle of 50. The position varies between 2 to 30 positions, and wire gauge ranges from 20 to 30. And so this connector is a part of our Signal B collection. And our Signal B collection has connectors that range from 1 to 5 amps, delivering high-end performance with high position counts and different types of locking, whether it's side latch, center latch, or a friction lock. Moving on to the design of the DF51. The DF51 family has the side latches, which latches on both sides of the header, preventing the socket from lifting up and having any air gaps in the middle. Another thing about the DF51 is that the right angle type in the small positions comes with boss pins. And these boss pins right here, they help you with PCB alignments. So you don't flip the connector around 180 degrees. The pins will fit in, but the boss pins will prevent the rotation from happening. Another thing about the 51 is that with the gold plating on the 51 and the addition of the nickel underplating prevents any fretting corrosion from happening, ensuring a high reliability under vibration. The DF51 also comes with guide keys, visual representation of the guide keys to prevent any reversed or incorrect mating. And the DF51 series supports potting up to 3 millimeters on the vertical type. Speaking about the low profile and space saving design of the DF51, since the DF51 has side latches, it saves you some space compared to a center lock. As you see in the picture above on the top, it shows you that a center lock could raise the height of the connector, and the side latches, the design of the side latches gives you a little bit of a height saving for your project or your customer. And then the efficiency for the side latches is that the side lock is efficient for horizontal mounting. So this design kind of shows you a picture right here. Now this gives the customer the benefit of easily mating and unmating the connector or performing any field services on the field, and gives them an easy access of getting those latches with your finger. It can be a little hard to route your cables vertically or get to the center latch if they're mounted next to each other. Moving on to the part number configuration. So if you go on our catalog and you're trying to make a part number for the DF51, you'll see the guide boss types, branch type without boss types, and you'll make your connector part number here. And then you go to the crimp contact and it says DF11. So you might think this is a mistake, but no worries, this isn't an error. The great thing about the DF51 is that it uses the same crimp contacts as the DF11. This leads us seamlessly onto our next topic. But before we move on, Scott, could you post my first question, please?
Sure can. It's popping up there, Neural.
Yes, sir. What is the mating cycle rated for the gold-plated 51? Let's see. Right, all right. I think we have enough responses. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next slide, tooling. So because the crimp contacts are the same as the DF11, the tooling is also the same. So DF51 uses the same tool as the DF11. This makes tooling up for a new connector a lot easier and much less of a headache. It's a lot easier to find a vendor that can crimp the DF51 since it's the same tool, and Another thing I wanted to mention is that if a customer is using our DF11, we should definitely promote our DF51 to those customers since they're relatively similar connectors, but the DF51 has side latches and a couple additional benefits. So let's just do a brief recap of what the DF11 and the DF51 varies. What varies between them is that the DF11 is a 2 mm pitch friction lock connector with a max of 2 amps. And the DF51 is a 2 mm pitch double and single row with a 3 amp max that has straight right angle inline and branch type with a side latch. And it's also good for potting, which the DF11 is not. So this is one reason why we should definitely bring up the DF51 if we know or have a customer that's already using our DF11. And now moving on to our branch type connector, the branch adapter, DF51B. So this is addition into the DF51 family. This is a 2 mm pitch positive lock crimp type connector. It's got the same ratings as the DF51, but the difference is that this adapter has 1 input and 2 outputs. So in modern industrial equipment, we see a lot of complex wiring needs, and the DF51 was developed by Hirose to streamline these connections, reducing internal cabling and enhance reliability. The DF51 adapter can take in a single row socket as the input, as you see on this picture right here, and it splits the current, depending on the resistance ratio, it splits the current into 2 different outputs. So this effectively is a better, safer replacement for terminal blocks, 2 wires and 1 crimp, or hand soldering some wires together. So this is a better and a safer route to take if you have multiple different connection points coming out of one power source. Getting more into the design of the DF51, if you see a customer using one power source in this picture right here in the middle, if it's one power source and a bunch of messy cables going to different destinations, the DF51, what it can do is simplify this wiring problem, this wiring mess, into having one output coming out of the power source as the input into the DF51B. And then the 2 outputs could be output 1 can go to destination 1, and then output 2 can be the input for the next branch adapter. So you can do this and simplify your wiring from a messy bunch right here to a more simplified wire, easy to manage and easy to access. We see a lot of popularity for this connector in robotics, motion controlled motor controls, office equipments, and sensors. Moving on to finding the mate of the DF51B. So you see these 2 pictures on the top. These are 2 different sockets. There's a dual row socket with the blue wiring, and there's a single row socket with the red wiring. So if you're using the DF51 dual row socket, it can go into any of the dual row adapters or inline socket. And now it cannot go into the DF51B adapter. The DF51B adapter can only take a single row socket. So the input will be a single row socket, and the 2 outputs are 2 separate single row sockets, not a dual row socket. So if you're making a part number and you want to find the socket for the DF51B, make sure you find the single row socket, not the dual row for the output. Moving on to some competitive information, we're comparing our DF51 series to 3 different competitors. As you see, the biggest difference is that we have side latches, and comparing it with our competitors, it's all a sensor lock. And then we're pretty much in range for the wire gauge range, and competitor word kind of beats us in that, but we do beat competitor 1 in the voltage rating, where we're rated for 250 volts. And competitor 1 is rated at 125 volts. We also offer gold and tin plating options, where competitor 2 and 3 only offer tin plating options. Just an overview of where we rank with this connector competing in the market. And before we talk about the DF51K, can we throw in our second question, Scott?
There you go.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Right, this is a little tricky one. The right answer gets the Starbucks gift cards. All right, all right.
Everybody needs a little coffee.
Thank you, thank you. All right, getting into our DF51K series. The DF51K is a 2 mm pitch positive lock wire to board connector. The positive lock is the center lock. So the DF51 was a side latch, and the DF51K is a center lock. And the ratings are very competitive with the DF51. We have the right angle, straight and right angle type, and the DF51K comes in single and double row. Also with an option for gold and tin plating. This connector also supports potting up to 3 mm. The potting is supported only for the through-hole type, not the surface mount type. And this is also UL and CUL rated. The benefit of a center lock compared to a side lock is when you're mounting these DF51Ks next to each other side by side, if you had a center lock design, it would be a little harder to mate and unmate the connector. So this is where the center lock is more efficient in. The DF51K center lock design, the DF51, the surface mount and through holes both come in straight and right angle. And one thing to note out was the voltage rating for the DF51K is 250 volts, but the right angle type voltage rating on the double row is only at 100 volts. So just to point that out, but also in this connector, the DF51K, the tin plating comes in or has a mating durability of 30 mating cycles, and the gold plating has a mating cycles of 50. Moving on to the guide keys. So the DF51 also comes with guide keys where it prevents any reverse mating or mating of different sockets to different headers. So you don't accidentally mate the wrong one with the wrong header, wrong socket with the wrong header. It gives you an extra layer of safety. And moving on to the design of the header. So the DF51K header comes with a retention tab for both the right angle and the straight type. So this adds an additional higher peeling strength from the PCB board and better adhesion. Moving on to a recap of a DF51 and the 51K. So DF51 is a 2 mm pitch, single and double row, 3 amp max. Comes in straight, right angle, inline, and branch type. The DF51 has side latches. DF51K, very similar connector, but with the center lock. 2 mm pitch, single, double row, 3 amp max. Comes in right angle and straight. Also a positive center lock. Potting is good for the through hole type. Both these connectors are very similar. The 51 has side latches and the 51K has a positive center lock. Any questions for the team today?